She was beautiful, smart, and destined for a brilliant military career, until jealousy turned her into a killer. In 1995, Diane Zamora, a promising U.S. Naval Academy midshipman, made a deadly pact with her fiancé, a pact that would end the life of a teenage girl and shock the nation. This is the chilling true story of how love, betrayal, and obsession led to the brutal murder of 16-year-old Adrianne Jones. Diane Zamora was not just any young woman. She was a star student from Texas, admired for her discipline, ambition, and drive. In 1995, she achieved her dream of entering the U.S. Naval Academy, a place where only the best and brightest could make it. Her fiancé, David Graham, was equally impressive. A handsome, athletic cadet at the U.S. Air Force Academy, Graham was known for his charm and confidence. The two were considered a golden couple with matching military ambitions and a seemingly unshakable bond. But behind that perfect image was a relationship built on obsessive control and emotional intensity. When Graham admitted he had a brief sexual encounter with a local high school student, 16-year-old track star Adrianne Jones, it set off a chain of events that would turn their love story into a national scandal. It began during what should have been an ordinary conversation between the young couple. David Graham, for reasons still debated to this day, told Diane Zamora that he had been with another girl, just once. That girl was Adrianne Jones, a 16-year-old honor student and talented track athlete from Mansfield, Texas. To Graham, it may have been an attempt at honesty. To Zamora, it was a betrayal so deep it shattered her trust completely. Her rage was immediate, raw, and all-consuming. Friends would later testify that Diane became obsessed with the idea that Adrianne had to pay for what happened. This wasn't just jealousy, it was vengeful obsession. And according to prosecutors, in that moment, Diane didn't just want an apology. She wanted Adrianne Jones dead. Consumed by jealousy and rage, Diane Zamora made a chilling decision. Adrianne Jones had to be eliminated. Zamora pressured her fiancé, David Graham, to carry out the murder. To set the plan in motion, Graham contacted Adrianne directly. He called her and arranged a late-night meeting under the guise of wanting to talk privately. Adrianne had no romantic interest in Graham and saw him only as an acquaintance. On the night of December 4th, 1995, Graham picked up Adrianne as planned, with Zamora hiding in the car. Their plan was to drive her to a remote location where they could kill her without witnesses. A horrifying plan became a brutal reality. That night, Adrianne Jones believed she was simply meeting David Graham, the fiancé of Diane Zamora, to have a private conversation. She had no idea what was planned. David Graham, who was directly involved in the crime, picked Adrianne up from her home in Mansfield, Texas. Diane Zamora, Graham's fiancé, hid quietly in the back seat during the drive. The tension was high, but Adrianne remained unaware of the danger she was walking into. They drove for about 20 miles to a remote wooded area near Grand Prairie, Texas. This location was far enough from Adrianne's neighborhood and any witnesses chosen deliberately to avoid detection. The area was isolated, surrounded by thick trees and away from any main roads. Once there, Graham suddenly attacked Adrianne with a dumbbell, hitting her multiple times. Bleeding and in pain, Adrianne tried to escape through the trees, but Graham caught her. She pleaded for her life, begging him to stop. Ignoring her desperate pleas, Graham then shot her twice in the head, killing her instantly. After the murder, they left her body in that secluded spot, hoping the isolation would prevent anyone from finding it quickly. Then they drove away, attempting to cover their tracks. But the brutal crime didn't stay hidden for long. After Adrianne Jones was killed, Diane Zamora reportedly felt satisfied that the person she was jealous of was no longer a threat. But the crime did not remain hidden for long. Adrianne's body was found on December 15, 1995, in a remote wooded area near Grand Prairie, Texas, about 20 miles from her home. Her family was devastated, but police had very little to go on. The crime scene yielded few clues, and there were no immediate suspects. The police questioned David Graham soon after the body was found because he had arranged to meet Adrianne that night. Graham told investigators he did meet Adrianne, but claimed he left her alive and well. Because there was no direct evidence against him at the time, and his story was plausible, police did not suspect him initially, and the investigation stalled. For several months after Adrianne's body was found, the investigation stalled with no new leads. Then, in mid-1996, classmates of Diane Zamora and David Graham began overhearing them talk openly about the murder, sometimes boasting or confessing their involvement. Concerned by what they heard, these classmates reported the information to the authorities. Following these reports, the police reopened the case, focused their investigation on Zamora and Graham. In mid-1996, after classmates reported overhearing Diane Zamora and David Graham talking about the murder, police reopened the investigation. Prior to this, despite questioning Graham early on, authorities had little concrete evidence linking either suspect to the crime. The classmates' testimonies about confessions and bragging provided crucial new leads and probable cause. Based on this information, both Zamora and Graham were formally arrested later that year and charged with capital murder. Their trials were held separately. During the proceedings, the prosecution argued the motive was jealousy and obsession, describing the case as a deadly pact of love between the two cadets. Witnesses, including friends and classmates, testified about the confessions and the toxic nature of Zamora and Graham's relationship. Ultimately, both were found guilty of capital murder. The court highlighted how their calculated and cold-blooded actions, driven by jealousy and possessiveness, led to the tragic death of Adrianne Jones. In Texas, capital murder can carry the death penalty, but in these cases, prosecutors chose not to pursue execution. Instead, both defendants were sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole only after serving 40 years. This meant neither could even be considered for release until the year 2036, long after their youth had passed. At the time of sentencing, Diane Zamora was just 19 years old, and David Graham was 18. They stood in court, flanked by their defense attorneys, as the verdicts were read. The atmosphere was heavy. The sound of shuffling papers and the faint hum of cameras clicking filled the room. Members of Adrianne Jones's family sat in the front rows, some holding hands tightly. Adrianne's mother stared directly at the defendants, her face a mixture of grief and quiet anger. Her father's jaw was clenched, his eyes fixed on the judge. Neither Zamora nor Graham broke down in tears when the sentences were announced. Zamora maintained a cold, stiff expression, avoiding eye contact with the victim's family. Graham looked down at the defense table, fidgeting slightly but showing little visible emotion. Prosecutors later remarked on this lack of remorse, saying it reinforced the perception of the crime as calculated and heartless. Outside the courthouse, the verdict drew strong reactions. Some people were shocked that two promising young cadets, Zamora, a midshipman at the U.S. Naval Academy, and Graham, an Air Force Academy cadet, had committed such a violent act. Others felt justice had been served, but admitted the life sentences could never truly make up for the loss of Adrianne's life. For the Jones family, the sentencing brought a measure of closure, but not relief. As Adrianne's mother told reporters, "It doesn't bring her back." We just hope they have a very long time to think about what they've done. The trial and sentencing of Diane Zamora and David Graham became one of the most talked about criminal cases of the 1990s. Almost immediately, the press labeled it the Texas Cadet Murder, a phrase that would appear in headlines, TV specials, and even book titles. The story had all the elements that fascinated and horrified the public. Television networks scrambled to cover every development. Dateline NBC, 48 Hours, and 2020 all aired in-depth specials, interviewing former classmates, teachers, and even neighbors of the accused. Talk shows dissected the case, debating whether the murder was a result of a controlling relationship, teenage impulsivity, or pure cold-blooded planning. In Texas, the case became almost folklore, a cautionary tale parents told their teenagers about how jealousy and blind loyalty can turn deadly. For many, the image of two young cadets in their crisp uniforms being led away in handcuffs became symbolic of wasted potential and moral collapse. After sentencing, Zamora was sent to the Mountain View Unit in Gatesville, Texas, a maximum security women's prison. She maintained her innocence in several interviews, claiming that while she knew about Graham's intentions, she was not directly involved in the killing. This contradicts Graham's version, who has consistently stated that Zamora encouraged and participated in the crime. Graham, on the other hand, was incarcerated at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice's Ramsey Unit, a men's prison in Rocheron, Texas. Over the years, he expressed regret, but often framed himself as a young man who was manipulated by an obsessive partner. Both will be eligible for parole in 2036, but given the brutality of the crime and the lasting impact on Adrianne's family, legal experts believe release is unlikely, at least at their first hearing. For Adrianne's family, the end of the trial was not the end of their grief. Her mother often speaks about how Adrianne was full of life and had dreams of traveling the world. She had been a standout athlete, a bright student, and a loyal friend. The family has worked quietly to keep her memory alive, often avoiding the media spotlight except when speaking out against parole for her killers. "We lost a daughter, and the world lost what she could have been," her father said years later. If you've been with us this far, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next story.